Destructive birdie. Bird causes expensive accident. He was real calm, said police officer Greg Johnston after assisting a driver who'd driven his 1 million-pound Bugatti supercar into a salt marsh. If that had been me, I'd have been pretty upset, but I imagine the guy was probably mad inside. The driver, Evan Stevens, blamed a low-flying pelican for the mishap. I was driving along, listening to the radio, when all of a sudden this bird flew across my windshield. I just panicked and swerved across the road, trying to avoid it. I guess I shouldn't have been so kind. That bird has ruined my car, explained Stevens. After Stevens lost control of the car, it plunged into the salt marsh beside the road. He managed to climb out and wasn't injured in the accident, but the car slowly sank into the water. Stevens, 43, had bought the car recently, and it had just 700 kilometers on the clock. I don't know whether the car can be salvaged or not, but I do know that salt water isn't good for anything, he added. The Bugatti Veyron is the fastest and most expensive production car in the world, and is capable of reaching speeds of more than 300 kilometers per hour. This car is probably a write-off. I only hope he can get something back on the insurance, Officer Johnston added.
Corny criminals. Jobs for the boys. How to get a job against all the odds.
The British often lecture other nations on how democracy should work. But perhaps they need to take a few lessons themselves, as recent events have shown. Take the case of Robert Burston. He's just been appointed by the UK Tax Office, HMRC, to take charge of their largest call centre in East Kilbride, just outside Glasgow. His job is to coordinate the call centre and give advice on tax matters. But this isn't Burston's first encounter with the tax office. A few months ago, Burston was made bankrupt by them. Burston's debt, the origins of which are not known, stands at more than €300,000. So, how did Burston, a man made bankrupt over unpaid tax, get a job advising everybody else on their tax bills? Simple. His best friend, Linda Talbot, who is the overall director of call centres, helped him. Talbot and Burston go back a long way. They worked together in the same bank during the 1990s, and until recently, they could be found as each other's friend on Facebook pages. The links have since been removed. Suspicions were raised when Burston was brought in on higher pay than the normal level for his grade. Another favour from his friend. The tax office insists that the correct procedures were followed. We are sure that there is nothing untoward in the way that Miss Talbot went about recruiting Mr. Burston. And that was all they had to say on the matter.
Listening and repeat.
Assisting
To assist, to help.
salt marsh salt marsh salt marsh
A salt marsh. An area of land that is wet with water from the sea, salty water.
upset upset upset
Upset. angry and sad.
Pelican. Pelican. Pelican.
A pelican. A large white bird with a big beak, nose, for holding fish.
Mishap. Mishap. Mishap.
A mishap. An accident.
Windshield. Windshield. Windshield.
A windshield. The big piece of glass at the front of a car that you look through whilst driving. A windscreen in British English.
Swerved. Swerved. Swerved.
To swerve. To change direction suddenly.
Plunged into. Plunged into. Plunged into.
To plunge into. If a car plunges into water, it goes into the water quickly and violently.
Sank. Sank. Sank.
To sink. If an object sinks, it goes to the bottom of the water.
On the clock. On the clock. On the clock.
On the clock. The number of kilometers, miles, on the clock, represents the number of kilometers, miles a car has been driven.
Salvaged. Salvaged. Salvaged.
To salvage. If someone salvages something, they rescue, save it from the bottom of the sea, a river, etc.
Write off. Write off. Write off.
A write-off. If a car is a write-off, it is completely destroyed.
Insurance. Insurance. Insurance.
Insurance. If you have insurance, you have a legal agreement with an insurance company. They will cover all, some of the costs of an accident.
Lecture. Lecture. Lecture.
To lecture. To explain. Tell someone how something works.
Appointed. Appointed. Appointed.
To appoint. If A is appointed to a position in a company, he, she is given that position.
HMRC. HMRC. HMRC.
HMRC. Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, the British Tax Department.
Tax. Tax. Tax.
Tax. Money you pay to the government to pay for services, health, the police, education, etc.
Encounter. Encounter. Encounter.
An encounter, a meeting, especially one that is not planned.
Bankrupt. Bankrupt. Bankrupt.
Bankrupt. If someone is bankrupt, they have no money to pay their bills.
Debt. Debt. Debt.
Debt. Money you owe to someone, the bank, etc.
Go back a long way. Go back a long way. Go back a long way.
To go back a long way. If two people go back a long way, they have known one another for a long time.
Removed. Removed. Removed.
To remove, to take off, to delete, eliminate.
Suspicions were raised. Suspicions were raised. Suspicions were raised.
Suspicions were raised. People started to think that something dishonest, bad had happened.
Grade. Grade. Grade.
A grade, an accepted level or standard.
Nothing untoward. Nothing untoward. Nothing untoward.
Nothing untoward, nothing bad, illegal, dishonest.
Recruiting. Recruiting. Recruiting.
To recruit. If someone is recruited for a job, they are interviewed and hired to do that job.